Fear Not, Episode 52. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Robert Dugoni. Welcome, Robert. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Are you ready to fear not today?
I'm ready.
Okay. Robert Dugoni is the critically acclaimed New York Times, the #1 Wall Street Journal, and the #1 Amazon best-selling author of the Tracy Crosswhite series, which includes My Sister's Grave, Her Final Breath, In the Clearing, and the newly released The Trap Girl. He's also the best-selling author of the David Sloan series, as well as the standalone novels The Seventh Canon and The Cyanide Canary. He is the recipient of the Nancy Pearl Award for Fiction, a finalist for the International Thriller Writers and the Mystery Writers of America Awards. He's also been nominated twice for the Harper Lee's Award for Legal Fiction. Robert, could you take a few minutes to fill in the gaps and maybe give us a brief glimpse of your personal life as well?
Sure. Whenever I get asked about my life, I always start with the fact that I'm one of 10 kids. Because it's not only is it unusual, but it really in many ways defines who I am as a person. I grew up in Northern California, very humble kind of surroundings. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad owned his own pharmacy. And, really what I had family. I had 5 brothers and 4 sisters, and I just, grew up in an environment that was kind of full of love and full of people that I loved. My youngest brother was born with Down syndrome, and so that was an experience that all of us, I think, took to heart. Many of my brothers and sisters went into medicine as a result of that, and I think a lot of my writing is influenced by my family and influenced by how I was raised, and influenced really by the surroundings that I grew up in. So, I like to tell people that I was a compulsive overachiever, and I think that pretty much fits every member of my family. So even though I always wrote, and I knew from really it's the 7th grade from an experience I had writing and speaking in the 7th grade, that what I wanted to do was I wanted to write novels. The compulsive overachiever in me said, when you get out of college, you're supposed to go to graduate school. And so after I worked for the LA Times for a little while, I applied to law school at UCLA, and I went to school with friends, and I got on that treadmill that, I think a lot of people in this life get on, where they're just doing what they kind of think they're supposed to be doing, or they're doing what comes easy to them, what brings in a paycheck. And I practiced law at a law firm in San Francisco for about 13 years, and became a partner down there, and had a big book of business, and really enjoyed myself, enjoyed my life, enjoyed how things were going, but just had sort of this inner burning of unfulfillment. There was just something that was out there, that this wasn't what God had meant for me to do with my life, and this feeling that I wasn't fulfilled. I just didn't feel professionally like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that's probably the first time I really had a tremendous amount of fear. And that was in 1999, and that was when I had to go to my partners, and I had to tell them that I was leaving. I was leaving the practice of law, and I was going to set out on this career to try to become a writer. And I was leaving behind a lot of very good friends. I was leaving behind a lot of money, and I was moving to Seattle, a new place where I had never lived. My wife is from up here, from Seattle, and she wanted to get back home to be close to her family. And I set out on this adventure not knowing whether I'd have any success at all, knowing that I would be a long way from home, a long way from my brothers and sisters, a long way from friends. And I just kind of dove in and took a shot. And I'm still here. So I've had a lot of ups and downs, but I'm still here. I'm still standing.
Well, thank you for sharing. Robert, would you also share with us one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Sure. I would have told you that my biggest fear was changing careers back in 1999. But a year ago, my wife turned 50, and I threw a big birthday party for her at a brewery that I had rented out. We had about 100 friends, and we had food trucks, and we had all kinds of gifts and presents, and everything was going wonderfully until the end of the night when I was paying all the people I needed to pay, and I started to get double vision. And I thought I was getting a migraine headache, and I sat down, and there was a woman at the party who was a nurse, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, I think I'm getting a migraine." And she turned to someone standing next to her and she said, "Find him an aspirin right now and call the hospital." And it turns out I was having a stroke. And I was very blessed that night, not only that she was present, but that a very good friend of mine who is a cardiologist was present. And so within minutes, I was in the back of an ambulance with all these people still at my wife's party, with my son and daughter present, and I was being whisked away to a hospital. And the longer this progressed during the night, the less and less I was able to communicate, able to understand my surroundings, what was going on, and really had to put myself in the hands of some very good people to get through what I got through that night.
So, how did you get through it?
Well, I began to realize that I wasn't making sense. My daughter was in the room with me, and I thought I was asking her for the hand sanitizer, and it turns out I was asking her for the basketball. She's a basketball player, and I had no idea why she couldn't understand me. And so I began to get very quiet because I knew that opening my mouth, I wasn't making any sense. And I really leaned on my wife heavily. She became my voice. She became the person that spoke for me. I had a lot of really wonderful friends, my cardiologist, the nurse, who really took it upon themselves to take care of me, to get me the best care possible, to get me immediate care, and to get me through it. So, I relied tremendously on all of them, and I relied tremendously on my faith. Um, I had a good friend that had a heart attack, and he and I were at dinner together, and we had a chance to speak. And when we were by ourselves, looked at me and he said, "Were you ever afraid?" And I had to think about that for a moment, because honestly, I hadn't really contemplated that. And what was really strange is when I thought about it, I realized that I was not afraid. And I think everybody has an innate fear of dying, but I don't recall being afraid that night. I recall feeling very content, very at peace, um, and I do recall praying. I do recall um, just feeling. There was a feeling that I was okay, that I was going to be okay, that I was surrounded by good people, and I was surrounded by my faith. And I just recall that I was not afraid. Um, and he looked at me and he said, "Neither was I." And we both kind of had a moment there where it really dawned on us what that meant. And it really gave me a good, strong sense of peace. My wife always says that the dying is hardest on the living, and I think she's right. Um, I obviously worried about my wife. I worried about my two children, but I didn't worry about myself. I knew that I was going to be okay whatever happened.
So, do you have any sort of current fear revolving around this period of your life that's post stroke?
No, I can't say I have a current fear. I am on a blood thinner, and my neurological functions have returned to normal, and I am just progressing with my life the way that I had up until that moment. Um, Certainly, it's not something that I'm looking forward to. I I worry most about I worry most about my children, my kids. I want to be there for them. I want to be there for my son, for my daughter. I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to see my son graduate from college and go on to do other things. I want to be a grandfather someday. I want all those things that I think everybody in life wants in their personal life. Um, certainly it's something that lingers in the back of my mind. Um, it's something I wish I had didn't go through, but I also feel in some respects I'm very blessed that I did, because the doctors were able to discover, the cause of it, which is I have a heart a valve that didn't completely close when I was born, which occurs in about 20 to 25% of the population. And so it was not very, but it was susceptible on a minute level to a blood clot getting through, which is what happened to me, and getting to the back of my brain and causing the stroke. And so they put me on a blood thinner. And, when I went and saw the neurologist after about a month, the neurologist looked at me and said, the chances of this reoccurring, especially if you remain on a blood thinner, are infinitesimally small. And so I feel very, very blessed that in some respects this occurred, and I was able to gather the information that I needed for the future.
Are you ready for the speed run?
I am.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Jesus Christ.
And if you could instantly change one thing in the world, what's that change going to be?
I think it would be man's inhumanity to man. Um, that leads to war and all the other problems that we have in this world. But I think I'd say that man's inhumanity to other men.
What's your biggest weakness?
Oh, my biggest weakness. God, I have so many of them. um, I would say that. I guess I would say that my biggest weakness is that I want so much out of life that it's hard often to balance it. I want so much for myself, but I also want so much for my family, professionally and personally, that at times it becomes very difficult to balance all the things I do in my life.
What's your biggest strength?
My ability to multitask, really. I mean, as ironically as that sounds, but my ability to multitask, my ability to get done what I need to get done.
And if you could only have one book to read, what book would that be?
I'm debating this, but I think I would say Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry.
And do you have a favorite sound?
The sound of my fingers on the keyboard is a great sound for me.
Robert, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way for anyone to get a hold of me really is just through my website, which is just www.robertdugoni.com. I have an email address on there as well, and they can email me at bob@robertdugoni.com. And I do my best to answer emails. I get quite a few of them now, but I really do my best to try to answer as many as I can.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
Oh, I'd say parting advice would be to live every day to the fullest, to not let any day go past where you don't find some joy in that day and some joy in some moment of that day, whatever that may be. Take the time to enjoy it and take the time to smile.
That's really good advice, and thank you. And I want to also let everyone know that Robert has generously donated a copy of The Trapped Girl. So if you'd like an opportunity to win that, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com to submit your free entry form today. Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. It's been really great having you here today.
Yeah, no, glad to do it. I think you have a. I was listening to your show the other day a couple times, and you've had some really interesting guests on, and they've been really interesting. So I applaud you. You've done a really terrific job.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.